What's up, English 101ers? Professor Schuler here with another video. Today we are going to talk about how to let your research steer your research paper. In other words, how to let the research that you're going to incorporate in your actual essay actually literally guide where and what you talk about in that essay. For the most part, this is an easier approach to writing research papers. And yeah, so let's get started. Okay, first off, if you haven't seen the previous two videos, make sure that you guys go back and that you watch those two videos, because especially at the beginning here, we're going to be using a couple techniques that you're not going to understand unless you have been watching the videos up to this point. Okay, so just make sure that you have seen those before you see this. Okay, got our full text, our scholarly peer-reviewed. We're doing dogs and mental health. This is kind of the fake example that we've been working with here. Okay, now if you've seen the other video, you know that the first one that we used here was number 10, companion dog acquisition and mental well-being, community-based peer controlled study. And I already had this works cited. There we go. I already have a sort of mock works cited going on here with that citation. And I want to encourage you guys, when you're doing your own papers, don't be afraid if you can't find good sources for a couple listings. It's not uncommon that, right, in this case we have 341 possible search results, out of which a bunch aren't going to be applicable towards what we need. So I've already searched through a handful of these, but don't be dissuaded if you can't find the stuff you're looking for a little while. Just keep looking. As long as you have a large amount to choose from, you're probably going to find it. So the next one, if I was writing my paper, is kind of how I'm approaching this. The next one that I find personally is number 60, right? So I jumped from 10 to number 60, if that's any indication for you guys. A doggone way to reduce stress and animal-assisted intervention with college students. So this is the next source I'm going to incorporate. And if you are paying attention, I've already, real quick just to highlight, I've already gone and gotten my, notice how this one is in all caps, so I had to change that because that's technically incorrect. I've already listed my citation here, right? And I've already made a works cited entry for this citation, right? Just to show you guys. And real quick, if you look at this just by itself right here, this is exactly how your works cited page should look, with the exception of a different last name. The page number will be different because the works cited itself will be obviously after other pages. This is at the very end of your essay. And each entry sticks out like that, and it goes in alphabetical order. Okay. All right. Getting back to the article here. So I clicked the full PDF text, and again, as you guys might probably know, I've already read through this article kind of quickly just to find the quote or the thing that I'm going to use. And if you guys want to, feel free to incorporate more than one quote, more than one bit of data or statistics out of your sources. You can really pull as many as you want to, as long as you're not overdoing it in that sense. All right. So the quote specifically I'm going to pull is this here at the bottom. Not a single student reported in this study that their exposure to dogs provided neutral, little, or no stress relief. Okay, for the sake of the video, I'm just going to copy and paste the quote here. I'm going to put it in quotation marks just to remind myself. And I'm going to get the last name, and I'm going to run up and pull the page number, which in this case is 202. All right, so I have an actual citation to work with here. Okay. One thing I want to show you guys as well real quick is that though I'm using this quote from the very bottom of the paragraph, not one student reported that their exposure to dogs, blah, 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 blah. I'm also going to jump back and I'm going to grab this part of it because it's relevant towards what I want to get out of there, right? 235 students completed this survey. So again, I'm just going to copy and paste it just for the sake of time. And in this case, this is what I'm going to do. Okay. Bam. All right, in this case, the out of, this is my words, and by putting it in parentheses, this is sort of me framing these two separate sentences. Notice, come back to here, one's at the beginning here, and one's at the very end of this little paragraph. But because I am the master and I have all the power over my own paper, I sort of get to smash this information together if I see fit into one quote. So I end up with out of, and that's a part that I've made up with, and you can put in parentheses in a quote to make it make more sense, like that. Out of 235 students, ... This is where I smash two different sentences together to make it one sentence. So it reads, out of 235 students, not one student reported that their exposure to dogs provided neutral, little, or no stress relief. And then I have the last name, and I have the page number, and I have the period on the very end. And that is my quote. That is my mobile direct quote, and it is MLA format happy. And because I have the citation, we are good to go. You can use that in any capacity kind of thing. All right. So looking at my little piece of Word document paper here, you'll notice that I have a couple of things up here that I haven't talked about. Let your research be your guide is kind of what we're talking about today. And first off, you should be patient not only in how you research, but the kind of stuff that you can stumble across that might work and be beneficial for your paper. Right? Don't get stressed out if you only run through 20 or 30 sources and you can't find it, right? Because that's very little, and you don't actually have to read through those to know that they're not for you. And then the second part is that research dictates content, and this is the part we're going to focus on right now, right? So in my mock writing of a research paper here, I have my quote, I have my quote here, and I have my idea. So one thing that this particular quote is sort of leaning towards is this idea of stress relief. Now, if this was my working thesis before I found this bit of research that you guys just saw me go through and pull a quote out of, this can adapt my working thesis, because all of a sudden I have this idea that has been added that I hadn't considered. That pets in this case has been changed to dogs, right? Because we're getting a little more specific with what we're dealing with. Dogs are good for mental health. In this case, right, there's another idea that I can sort of bring up just naturally because my source itself, my research is sort of guiding me towards talking about this specific idea of stress relief. So now, in my working thesis, I can say something like, dogs are good for mental health in that they provide stress relief. And in this case, I'm going to do a 1, provide stress relief. The reason I put a little 1 here is I'm not actually writing my paper, right? I'm sort of making an outline, and this is just a mental note that's going to, if I want to, right, we can go like that. This is a mental note to myself, sort of showing that these are going to be my topic sentences that my paper is going to talk about. Okay, and in the usage of a quote like this, if I was to set up this as a different topic sentence, I might say something like, one of the surprising benefits of interacting with dogs is that many studies, or at least, what does it say, studies, show being in the company of dogs can relieve stress. And if I wanted to, right, this gives me a whole nother avenue that I can approach. If I want to, I can now even go find some statistics, and I'll put another little mental note of some kind. I can find some statistics about human stress in the USA or something like that, right? And I could go back to my search engine, and I have another avenue to where I could find some more data or some more studies or whatever kind of stuff might relate to that I could then incorporate. I could say something like, 5 out of 10 people in the United States are super stressed out, and stress is correlated with heart disease and shorter life and blah blah. Stress is really bad. So bringing it back to my topic, my idea, my topic sentence, right? One of the things that dogs are good for in mental health specifically is they actually relieve stress. It has been proven. Here is one study done by Dr. Lisa House at Millersville University. If I wanted to get wordy, I could come get all this information, right? One study done by, let me do it real quick. I'll put the name back in a sec. One study done by Blank University proves that even a short amount of time spent with dogs can relieve the stress in university students, right? And I could say, according to Dr. House, take out my last name, throw in my quote, fix the capitalization. According to Dr. House, quote, out of 235 students, not one student reported that their exposure to blah, 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 blah. And I could talk about how there wasn't a lot of time spent with each student, blah, 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 right? My point being, I'm going to take this out here because I don't need it. My point being is that this initial finding this, just go back just to show you, finding this source, right? And then sort of reading through, finding at least one, maybe even 2 or 3 or more quotes in this source that are compelling and interesting and give me something to talk about. From there, this was the catalyst. This was the thing that sparked me having this idea to talk about stress, right? Was coming to this quote and thinking about using this as a whole. So when I'm planning out my whole entire essay now, I now have a whole subsection of stuff that I can talk about that I did not have beforehand, before I did the research, right? And this is where this third idea in letting research be your guide here is that for you guys, this is practice, right? This is not you doing actual college level university research. You're not going to be running surveys or focus groups or anything like that. This is about practicing the nuts and bolts of writing a research paper and starting to incorporate appropriate college level research, and then writing with that research in your own sort of back pocket. That's what this is about in a nutshell. Right? So I really want to encourage you guys to let your research guide you. Let your research steer where and what you're going to talk about. It's going to make your overall paper and how you approach writing this much easier than if you go up about trying to prove something or trying to come up with your own specific avenues of research. If you guys are passionate and you know what you're talking about, that's very much an option. I don't want to dissuade you guys from doing that. But for those of you who feel like you're struggling with just writing this paper or having this essay as a whole, I really suggest to just before you almost do anything else, come around and just read and play around in the EBSCO search area and see what kind of stuff you can find. And oftentimes it'll sort of hand you the topics and the subtopics that you're going to talk about, right? Instead of having to make them up. And then the reverse of that would be to make it up and then try and go and find research that's going to facilitate that, which is not always easy in this kind of an environment, right? So, okay. That is the end of the video for today. Again, if you guys need to reach out, if you need any help or anything along the way, please email me, text me. If anyone wants to set up an individual Zoom of any kind, we can do that. And I hope you guys are doing great. All the best.